Thank you. So good evening. This is the District of Sechelt regular council meeting of Wednesday, August 5th. We have an amended agenda. The amendment was put out this afternoon. It adds in the documents for the statement of financial information and then just renumbers the rest of the agenda. So, first of all, any conflicts in this agenda before we move forward? No conflicts? Okay. Motion to adopt the amended agenda. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. No appointments and delegations, no proclamations. Number 5, minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of July 15th. I'd look for a motion to adopt. Moved. So seconded. Okay, any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor? Thank you. Committee of the whole meeting of Wednesday, July 22nd. There is one recommendation in here, so we're looking to move receipt and adoption. The recommendation was that the committee recommend to council that the district become a member with Coastal Communities Social Procurement Initiative. Would someone like to move receipt and endorsement? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. So moving on to business items. Item 10.1, development variance permit 5845 Sunshine Coast Highway for RTC properties. First motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor. Thank you. And over to staff.
Thank you. Okay, I'll be presenting tonight development variance permit for 5845 Sunshine Coast Highway. This is also known as the RTC property at Shorncliffe Avenue and Sunshine Coast Highway. Here's an aerial overview for a context of where the site is located, right at the corner of Shorncliffe Avenue, Highway 101, adjacent from the Justice Center. A little bit of background on the property and this application. A tree cutting permit was issued April 13th, 2018. This authorized the removal of trees and established a tree protection zone. Subsequently, a development permit was approved by council on June 6, 2018. It was approved by council but not issued by staff as there were some development permit conditions outstanding. And this was a result of a bylaw amendment that was adopted on July 18th, 2018 for establishing the CD39 zone, which allows for up to 20 multifamily units on the property. The applicant chose not to proceed with the original development permit and submitted a new proposal in June of this year and substantially changed the proposal, although the number of units remains consistent with the zone. We're now looking at 2 10-unit multifamily buildings in a terraced building form with some increases in the height that was originally allowed in the zoning. And so for consideration right now is a variance to those height limits. So the previous proposal was a collection of townhouse units arranged on the site, and a number of they were called subzones were established to regulate the height of these buildings. And this was just a rendering of what the original proposal was. The current proposal changes that fairly significantly into more of an apartment building. So we have 2 buildings, 10 units in each building. These are 3-story buildings with a slightly higher service level roof that accommodates the interior stairwell and elevator and some of the building services. We're not proposing to change the existing zone layout, the subzone A over here, B, C, and D. However, they would require variances to the permitted heights in those particular areas to accommodate this building layout. These are some renderings of the proposed building. I would note that the landscaping has not been finalized and is not representative of what the actual site would look like. But the building color scheme and general form is in alignment with what's being proposed. This would be further analyzed through a development permit process for form and character for a multifamily. So the variance itself, as I noted, the subzones would be slightly changed. Subzone A would not require a variance at all, as the permitted height was up to 13.5 meters, and this building is significantly less than that. Subzone B would see a change from 10.5 meters to 11.6. But I would note that the 11.6 is only for a fairly small portion of the overall area of the subzone. And for the most part, it's the top of the roof of the third level at 10.9 meters that we would be accommodating. And that is a similar situation for the rest of the site as well. Subzone C going from 7.5 meters to 10.9 with some slight areas where 11.6 might need to be accommodated. So next steps on this application, if it is supported, staff are recommending conditional approval subject to a development permit that would look at the form and character of the site as well as overall landscaping. We'd be looking for a comprehensive landscape plan to be submitted, and this would be referred to the APC and brought to council at a future date for consideration. At that point, a works and services agreement would be entered into with the developer for frontage improvements, and finally a building permit could be applied for. So our recommendation today is that the variance be approved, conditional on a development permit for the 20-unit multifamily building. Thank you.
Council, any questions? Councilor McLean?
Yeah, sorry. To staff, I'm wondering if we know what the site coverage is on this proposal or what is permitted.
The permitted site coverage is 40%, and that's pretty much what the buildings are built out to at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lamb, you've unmuted yourself. Did you want to speak to this?
Oh. Well, I think I just wanted to make a comment that you know, this is a spectacular piece of property, and it's I realize there's a lot, you know, there's some history behind all this, but I'm very disappointed not to see more units being built on it. I'd love to see some more density, but I realize, you know, we are where we are, and it's the developer's choice. So that's all.
Okay, Councilor McLean?
Yeah, I think Councillor Lamb touched on my key point. This is one of the best available sites in Seashell, in my opinion. It's on the waterfront, it's close to downtown, and I believe this proposal is not living up to the potential of the site. And there's two key criteria that are outlined in the zoning bylaw, which I think I would like to see change, but I recognize that we're looking at a height variance, not a zoning variance. So if the proponents are listening, I may encourage them to consider that zoning, a zoning amendment to get a higher site coverage and to increase the number of units. I think both are quite small for what that lot is, and I think it can handle a lot more with a very similar height. So let's get more units in, and let's make the most of this property.
Okay, I have to agree with Councilor McLean and Councilor Lamb. You know, I was on council when this proposal came forward, and I was really disappointed with where it ended up. I agree that, you know, the location allows for many more units on that site. Walking distance, I mean, it's adjacent to downtown, right? So I know before us right now is a development variance permit request. What happens if we say we'd like to see if there's something else that can come on here? Basically, they've got a development permit at this point for the previous development, correct?
That's right.
So they're just looking to vary that. If this gets approved, they go to the new proposal. If it doesn't get approved, they stay with the existing proposal. Is that correct?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
There's nothing that would require the developer to proceed with the existing issued development permit. Other proposals could be brought forward, but they would have to be consistent with the adopted zoning of the CD39 zone.
So same height, same subzones, all those kinds of things.
That's right.
Okay. Councillor Scott.
So the question before was on lot coverage, and the requirement maximum is 40% coverage, which they hit with this, correct?
I believe it's quite close to 40%. Yeah, the 40% was inclusive of parking areas, and it allowed an additional 10% for roof overhangs and other deck overhangs and things like that.
And the previous proposal that was approved previously also had a 40% lot coverage.
That's right.
So what council is asking here is that the developer decides that he's going to cut down the size of the units and add more density within the footprint that within that 40%.
Yeah, an increase in density would require a rezoning.
Okay,
Yeah,
and that rezoning might increase the lot coverage area?
A rezoning would be able to entertain changes to all aspects of the zone. It depends what the applicant is requesting or what council is directing. Certainly, rezonings would any change to density and use would require a rezoning, and that generally consists of site coverage in most cases, but most certainly the number of units would require a rezoning.
Did the applicant say why they're changing direction on this?
I believe the rationale was market conditions and the desirability of having single level apartments compared to multi-level townhomes on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, we're kind of in a weird spot here. I think a developer can bring forward any proposal, or not any proposal, a proposal as they work with staff. So we can't really make a recommendation that they do a rezoning at this time. But what I'm hearing is that council may be willing to consider it should the proponent propose that. So I guess my question is, has staff had any conversations with the proponent about a potential rezoning on this site in the last year or so?
Yeah, let Director Allen potentially answer that question.
Yes, thank you, Councillor McLean. We have met with the applicants earlier in 2020 or perhaps late 2019, and certainly did discuss that option. Staff are not able to discuss outcomes, but we're able to discuss process, options, ideas, and so forth. And so we have explored that. What you see here is the modified proposal that the developers prefer at this time. One of the applicants is noted as an attendee and is observing this evening, so I'm sure a message has been received. Staff can carry on that conversation, but should a development variance permit be issued tonight or pending confirmation of future issuance, it would enable them to dive into the next phase of development permit for a new development permit for this property. Council does retain the right to recommend further changes, such as increase in density. Noting that density cannot be addressed through a variance, only through a change to the zone. Thank you.
Okay, so what you just said is, I think, that we could approve this or not, and then make further recommendations, potentially.
Right, so the task at hand is to consider the variance here.
Yes.
Should the variance be issued, it allows the applicants to pursue a development permit to work on the finer details of this building proposal. There could be a sub-recommendation, additional recommendation that council supports a consideration of a new development with an increased density. It could be almost like a recommendation. Going back, of course, you could also elect to not support the variance because you want to see further development potential. That calls into question, does it revert back to the original proposal or is it off the table?
Okay, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I think what we have in front of us is a height variance, and that is what we should be considering here. I think there's other things at play with this property. I think we've spoken to it. We'd like to see more density, maybe more lot coverage. And what I think is really needed is maybe a little more dialogue. So I would support a motion to defer this to the next meeting. And in the meantime, maybe we can have that dialogue with the proponent to see if there are other options, and we can make a decision on the height variance if it's still required at the next meeting.
Okay, so just to be clear, deferral to the next meeting, that means September, right? Okay. Is there a seconder for deferral? Councillor Lamb, seconded for deferral. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Scott.
Just based on what Andrew was saying there, I don't know if we necessarily have to defer it. You know, as the applicant has put forward the application, if we defer it and the conversation is no, this is the way we want to go with our development, it just comes back at us and it's delayed another month. So I think if the applicant is obviously online and listening, if we just move forward with the height variance as presented, and he has the understanding that we're open to discussion, we're not going to be holding this thing up for another month. So I'd say we can move forward as presented with the recommendations as Director Allen stated.
Councillor Kuster and then Councillor Toth.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say pretty much what Eric said. I completely agree. I don't want to hold up this project. The applicant has clearly heard what our feedback, and if he decides this is not the way he wants to move forward, at least he's not delayed in the process again. So let's just, if Andrew's saying we can still move forward, let's just move it as presented tonight.
Perfect.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
I just want to add my voice to the other two. This is not highest and best use of this property. However, this is the set of cards that the applicant has been dealt and is wanting to work with or willing to work with. And I don't think it's in anybody's best interests to reject or defer this particular variance application. If they want to change things, they can. But the lot has been in the condition it's in now for some time. And I'd like to start seeing something move forward on that corner.
Would anyone like to, yeah, Councillor Rowe.
Just chiming in, I agree with what everyone has said. And, you know, I think we need to deal with what's before us, and we can't second guess what's in their minds. But as everyone has said, I think they've heard the message tonight. So I think we should move this motion forward. But do we have a motion on the floor right now?
Yes, the motion on the floor is to defer this recommendation to September. Would anybody else like to speak to that? All right, all those in favor of the motion on the floor? What? Okay, all those opposed? Thank you. Okay, so would someone like to make another recommendation? Councillor Toth.
I will move recommendation 2.
Oh, sorry, I muted the wrong person. Try that again.
I'd like to move recommendation 2, that development variance permit 2020-05 be approved by council and issued once the following conditions have been met. A, issuance of a development permit for the proposed 20-unit multifamily development at 5845 Sunshine Coast Highway.
And is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded? Any further discussion? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I'll be voting against this motion. I think we can do a lot more within the OCP designation for this property. So I think I've already spoken to it. This isn't the highest potential for this property within the OCP. So I want to try and get something closer to that.
Thank you. Anybody else? All those in favor? Thank you. And then, is there another recommendation we'd like to make in line with what Director of Planning, Andrew Allen, mentioned? Councillor Lamb just went on mute. So, Councillor Scott?
Sure, I think we can make the recommendation that the planning talk to the applicant about our agreeance and looking at added density in this, if they're so amenable. I mean, they made a number of changes through the whole process, and previous to our council, this property is getting quite expensive. If they're willing, we're willing. So I don't know how you word that in the motion, but.
I think Director Allen had some wording around that. Or Jennifer may have some wording for us.
So I have that council supports a consideration of a new development for increased density. That's
Does
what Mr.
that-
Allen had put forward.
Perfect. Does that
Move it.
catch it? You'll move that? Okay, is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded? Any further comments? Councillor McLean?
Yeah, I support it in principle, but I don't feel like we should be supporting development that we haven't seen. So I'd rather not have a motion on this, so I'll be voting against this.
Thank you. Process, Director Allen, that would come back to us, would it not? And to the community and everything else. So it's just saying we are, encouraging you to look at something and come back with a proposal. So I don't think we're saying we're going to support whatever they come with. There's going to be, they've been through this a few times. Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. I would suggest that they'd be encouraged to come back with a proposal, noting that any change of number of units would trigger a whole new application for a zoning amendment. But, the applicants retain the right to consider yes or no on that decision.
Okay. So would you like that wording in the recommendation? That the applicants be encouraged to come back with a proposal considering more density?
If I may suggest something as simple as, and that staff be directed to work with the applicants to consider options for increased density.
Okay. Councillor Scott, is that okay for your motion?
Sounds great.
Sounds good. Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, I would like to, that 40% lot coverage, I'd like to see that expanded, but I mean, that just becomes part of the process here,
Mm-hmm.
I like 6 floors too, but I'm not going to say that.
You just did. All right, so Councillor Scott made a recommendation based on the wording from Director Allen. Is there somebody who would like to second that recommendation? Thank you. Seconded. I know we kind of had one on the floor, but we changed the wording. Councillor Todd.
I'd actually like it reread back one more time.
Perfect.
Apologies.
Okay. Jennifer?
That staff be directed to work with the applicant to support increased density. I'm not sure I got that fully correct though.
Actually, Your Worship, I think what I heard was the first part was also to stay in the motion. Is that correct? That council supports consideration of other options and that staff be directed to work with the applicant to increase density?
Is that what we've got? Counselor Scott?
Yeah, that makes more sense. Thanks, Joy.
Okay. Right, and Mr. Allen, did it capture what you had put forward?
Yes, very close. I think it was to consider options to increase density, which leaves it a little bit open in the sense that the options remain something that the developer can consider, but is not compelled to.
Right. Okay, do we want to have that read once more? Sounds like it. Yes, Jennifer? Good luck.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna need you to remesh that one.
Okay.
I've got that council supports a consideration of other options and that staff be directed to work with the applicant to support increased density.
Your worship.
Yes.
Sorry, I think what I heard was that council supports a consideration of options to increase density and that staff be directed to work with the applicants to increase density.
To consider increased density, I think is what we wanted, right?
To consider.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay. All right, so that's moved. Do we have a seconder for that recommendation?
Janice.
Seconded. Okay. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Would you like that recorded?
No.
Thank you. All right, that's item 10.1. Let's move on to 10.2. This is a request for decision, review of batch 44 brewery and kitchens application for amending liquor license at 5559 Wharf Avenue. Motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And staff.
Hi, yeah, this is Marina Stepovic. So I'm presenting batch 44 brewery and kitchen. Okay. Sorry, is my screen showing?
No, not yet.
Screen one. Share, sorry. Okay.
There you are.
Okay, so this is an application for an amendment to the liquor license at batch 44 brewery and kitchen at 5559 Wharf Avenue at the Wharf and Dolphin Street intersection. Just a bit of background, council considered the manufacturer liquor license application previously. The business opened, it was seemingly successful, quite popular, and then it closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Shortly after, the owners applied for a temporary patio expansion, which under the Liquor and Cannabis Board, they were approved, and the District of Sechelt also endorsed that application. So they have a temporary patio, which is currently approved, and they're now making an application to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch for an amendment to an existing liquor license to add permanent outdoor patio space. And the seating for that would increase their total seating capacity from 78 for an additional 26 outdoor seats. The hours remain the same, 12 noon to 12 midnight. And according to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, they ask that local government may pass a resolution to support or not, or choose not to comment. This local government endorsement does not guarantee the outcome for the applicant. So the location, most of you are probably familiar with it. It's right where the star is. It's in the C2 zone. Really what it comes down to for the zoning requirements is the parking. So by adding an additional 26 seats, the parking calculation would be for 1 stall for every 3 seats, which brings it to 35 stalls, but they currently have 26 stalls on site. And also part of the consideration of this application is there's also a shipping container on site, which is not authorized, and it is taking up one, if not more parking stalls, just because it takes up the whole stall. So I'll show some pictures that's looking out. So you can see there's the parking and the new patio that was already constructed for temporary use. That's just a closer up version of it. It's all on site on private property. So you can see in this picture, there's a bicycle that's being stored by a staff person kind of near the back door. And you can see the shipping container. And from this angle, you can see that it takes up the majority of a parking space. Just some more pictures. So just simply, the recommendations are that council pass a resolution which supports the application to the LCRB for the addition of a new permanent outdoor patio to the approved license for batch 44 brewery and kitchen, and that it be subject to removal of the unauthorized shipping container from the property, which would reinstate parking space, which is needed in the area, and that the applicant apply for and obtain a development variance permit for relaxation of the zoning bylaw parking requirements. And that's really where we could look at what are the options on the site. And again, that would require public notifications. I didn't mention that this was already sent out. This application to the Liquor and Cannabis Branch was already sent out for public comment. We sent notifications within 100 meters of the proposed site, and newspaper ads ran in the June 3rd and June 10th newspapers. Only one comment came back with no objections. So yeah, we're really looking at this variance situation for parking. And the other part of the recommendation is more of a technicality. It's the liquor board's process where they require that council confirm that in providing the resolution that they've gathered public input in the immediate vicinity. I've shortened the wording in here. The report has the full wording. That we've considered the location, the person capacity and hours of liquor service, the noise, community impact, residents' feedback, and reasons for whether or not the application be approved. So that's it.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councilor Scott?
Is the property already under a reduced parking variance without the patio?
Not that one that I'm aware of. I
How many
didn't.
parking spots would there potentially be?
Yeah, it would be a relaxation of 9 parking stalls.
So they have everything they need for the seating capacity they have.
Currently, yes.
Okay, any other questions? Councilor McLean?
Yeah, recommendation 2B that the apply for a development variance permit for the parking reduction. Just what would be the process around doing that? Would that come back to council, or is that within the director's authority?
Yeah, that would definitely come back to council. It's our regular development variance permit process where we do, again, public notification on that topic specifically. We get feedback and do a report, and it would require a separate application. So staff is recommending that the provincial licensing for the liquor license can proceed subject to the parking issue being dealt with through a variance process.
So I have a question. So given that whether we say we approve it or not, actually could not maybe have a bearing on what the province decides. Is that correct? I mean, we could say we don't approve it, but they could still approve it. Or we could say we don't approve it, vice versa. They have the final say. We're just making a recommendation.
No, because it wouldn't meet our zoning bylaw. So really, they need to deal with the parking issue, whatever that may be. Through a variance process, there would be some options we can look at. And yeah, that would be really our process.
So in other words, the province could approve it, but we could say, no, you can't do it because you haven't met our bylaws, etc.
That's
I mean,
right.
I guess I'm looking at, you know, how these two tie together.
Yeah, so the liquor licensing, they look at their part of it, and they want to get local government approval for the different considerations, and one of them being that it meets our bylaws.
Okay. Okay. Councillor McLean?
So on the development variance permit, could that be integrated with the Wharf Avenue project? I'm thinking because that's going to be right in front and it may affect their parking as well. And we may need to do some land swaps or something like that. So are those two processes integrated or two separate but related processes?
They are two separate processes, but one would have to consider the other. Yeah.
Mr.
If they
Allen,
want
did
to
you
do this increase in capacity.
Okay, Mr. Allen, did you want to address that?
Sure, and Marina is absolutely correct. They are separate process, but there's an opportunity to intermingle here. It's certainly the right opportunity to consider parking in that area wholesome sense. So they can continue to use this as is until October 31st under the temporary expansion area. So really what we can do is report back to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, should council wish to support, that we have a willingness to support, but we have a process that we need to go through first, right? And then we can take a wholesome look at the parking there. You know, I think one can observe that in many times it's busy in front of Batch 44. The parking lots in front, which could change due to the Wharf Ave upgrade, as well as busy in their parking lot. But it also takes a bigger picture and look at what's the availability of parking on Dolphin Street and Inlet Street. One, pardon me, one can observe in the middle of the business day, there's a fair amount of parking taking up on Inlet. You know, could be 2/3 of the spots are taken up. But if you wanted to come to Batch 44 at 7 p.m., it's probably unlimited parking within a 2-minute walk, right? But it's not on-street off-street parking on the parcel that the zoning bylaw requires. So a development variance permit can allow for some analysis of the surrounding options and meld in with the Wharf Ave upgrade project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Toth?
I will move the recommendations as presented, and I will not read them out because Marina did such a lovely job of summarizing them for us.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded? All right, any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Marina.
Thank you.
Item 10.3. Request for decision, COVID-19 Emergency Support Museums Assistance Grant Program. Motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And over to Siobhan.
Thank you. Before you is a report seeking permission from council to apply for a COVID relief fund that would assist with expenses related to our Seashell Community Archives. It is a recent support program that has been offered. We are eligible to apply. They assess how much we would be eligible for based on 2019 expenses. And as indicated in this report, District of Seashell didn't have any direct expenses for the community archives in 2019. Rather, the SCRD and Seashell Library took on those expenses. So we would work with SCRD and Seashell Library to obtain exact information on what was spent on the archives in 2019. We did start taking on expenses for the archives as of this year, particularly the lease that we have for the new space for the community archives. And so today we are seeking permission from council to apply to this program in hopes that we might be able to receive some funding to assist with the cost of the archives for 2020.
Okay. Councilor McLean, did I see your hand up? No?
No, but I did have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So who would be writing this grant? I'm just trying to manage staff time expectations. So would it be the archives or would it be our staff?
It would be myself, but in the options, council could choose to decline to apply for this and instead perhaps take a recommendation to the SCRD to make an application themselves. There's just a limited amount of time for this application.
So follow up to that question, if we apply, but we didn't actually have any expenses, who does the money actually go to?
It comes to us because we do have expenses this year. So the intent of the grant is to help with expenses this year.
Okay.
They determine how much you get based on what you spent last year.
Okay. So it's money for us, for our expenses, but based on last year. Okay.
Correct. And I did speak to a program officer to explain to them that there has been this transition where the archives had to move out of a space and find a new space, and we've taken on the lease. And so they said, that's fine. We just need to explain that in the application.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Toth.
Sorry, I was just going to chime in that encouraging the Sunshine Coast Regional District to submit an application could be problematic, given that I did see a deadline there of September 1st. And so there wouldn't be the opportunity for board endorsement of such an application. And as such, I will move recommendation 2, that council direct staff to submit an application to the Department of Canadian Heritage for the purpose of obtaining a grant.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. So I'll move on to item 10.4, which I think is you as well. So first, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And over to you.
Thank you. Before you is a report to provide council with an update on festivals and events for 2020. So we did bring an update to council a couple of months ago before Canada Day took place. And this is to bring you up to speed on what's happened since that time. So in the report, you'll see a summary about how Canada Day went, which was very well. We're incredibly pleased with how the event went, and we had the opportunity to speak with the MP today, and he was also very pleased to see the feedback that we received from the event. We also have an update on how the Summer Music Series concerts is going. Those are typically held as live concerts, and this year we chose to do online concerts. A bit of an update from our Seashell Arts Festival producer on what we can expect for the fall. And as well, an opportunity for Seashell to participate in a charity event that would involve hosting a drive-in movie for 2 nights in Hackett Park. And so tonight we're seeking council endorsement for the Seashell Arts Festival producers to continue moving forward with a combination of virtual and physically distanced programming. So similar to what we did for Canada Day, where we plan with hopes that there will be an opportunity to do some in-person programming, physically distanced, of course, but recognizing that we also need to be producing virtual online recorded programming as well. And also looking for council endorsement of hosting this drive-in event.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Councilor McLean?
Yeah, for the drive-in event, I'm wondering if we could hear a little bit more about how Habitat for Humanity was selected as the charity.
Sure. So we were approached by the drive-in organizers, Fresh Air Cinema. They have been working with Fortis BC this summer to provide charity events across the province. And they contacted me to see whether or not Sechelt would like to be a host community for one of these charity events. In the process of looking for a venue for this event, it came to light that Habitat for Humanity was also looking to host a charity event by doing a drive-in movie. So it was clear after searching for venues that there are very few venues available to host such an event on the coast right now that would actually work well for a drive-in. And the drive-in company itself, the Fresh Air Cinema, suggested that we work together because it was not likely that we would actually be able to find two different venues in order to host two separate events. Fortis BC, being the title sponsor, does ultimately have to approve of whichever charity receives the money. It is not District of Sechelt's tax dollars going towards this. It is simply the ticket revenue coming in and being directed to the charity that is selected. So the Fresh Air Cinema and Fortis BC requests that the community host partner select a charity. And because we were aware of the fact that Habitat for Humanity was also looking to host an event, as you're well aware, many charities are finding it incredibly hard to fundraise this year. And this was something that Habitat thought they might be able to do. Unfortunately, it just proved challenging to find a location. So we're proposing that the two of us work together to host this. Of course, it is an option for council to select a different charity or to select a charity that would benefit along with Habitat for Humanity.
So further question, how would tickets actually be sold? Or, I mean, it says it's sold online, but I mean, there are some families potentially who wouldn't be able to go because there is a suggested donation of $30 per vehicle. They may not be able to have that.
Yep. So Fortis BC and Fresh Air Cinema are committed to making this a family-friendly event that is very low barrier. And so how they are describing the event is as a free event with a suggested donation of $30 per vehicle, but it is effectively a pay what you can. So if $30 is not something that's affordable for your family, they are totally open to you paying whatever is available to your family. It is free. Because of the restrictions on public events and drive-ins in particular, we have to do it in a ticketed way. So what will happen is people who would like to attend the event will go online through Eventbrite, and that is managed completely by Fresh Air Cinema. So they will create an event on Eventbrite online, and people will register, and they can pay $1, they can pay $30, they can, whatever is within their means.
Perfect. All right, any other questions or comments? So there are some recommendations. Someone like to make those recommendations? Councilor McLean?
Yeah, recommendation 2, that council direct the producers of the 2020 Sechelt Arts Festival to program virtual and physically distanced activities and events that can be offered in person if provincial health regulations allow. And recommendation 3, that council direct staff to co-host with Habitat for Humanity a drive-in movie event sponsored by Fortis BC in accordance with the order of the provincial health officers for gathering and events for 2 nights in August 2020 at Hackett Parks, with proceeds supporting or benefiting Habitat for Humanity.
And that's been seconded. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Before you leave us, I want to thank you for all the work you're doing behind the scenes on all of these various events. And, you know, just, I know it's difficult and you're having to be very creative to try and meet all of the health guidelines, etc. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, on to item 10.5, Operations Center borrowing approval process. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. Purpose of this report is just to have approval to start the process on an approval of the electors for long-term borrowing for the Operations Center. In 2020 to 24 capital plan, we included $3.6 million in the budget for Operations Center. We are in the throes of reviewing all the RFPs that we had put out, or requests for proposals. We're not prepared to bring a report to council yet on which vendor or that we'll recommend. However, we want to move forward with the process, which the borrowing section would be kind of the longer part of the process in going forward with this building. On the second page, I've included the small Excel worksheet here that just outlays the potential costs for a building. And you can see that we'd be looking at borrowing somewhere around $2.7 million. We are recommending to go forward with $3 million just to cover anything that we have not covered so far with our analysis in costs. There's a chance there'll be a little bit of site activity that we'll have to do. So although there is a contingency in the 2.7 million, we'd like to go forward with the request of $3 million to borrow to the public. If you have any other questions, I'm glad to answer them.
And with every AAP, if we get approval to borrow $3 million, we only actually borrow what we need and
Correct.
pay on what we need. Okay.
Correct. So this would
Any
be
questions?
borrowing up to $3 million.
Right. Councillor Lamb, and then Councillor McLean. Oh, you're mute still.
There is some funds left in the sewer fund for this project, is there not?
Yeah, the first, if you're going through the chart, the top part of the chart, we're earmarking those funds for offsite services and for design and engineering. And then the construction, which is in the second part of the chart, would be the side that we'd be borrowing on.
So you're saying 843,464 is in the building reserve currently.
Correct. So the total project right now, we're estimating at 3.6 million. However, we do have the $843,000 in the reserve that we would be putting towards this project.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Lamb?
Nope, that's it. Great. Thank you.
Councillor McLean, Councillor Toth.
Yeah, just a process question. So once we approve this today, what would be the next steps?
So the next step, staff would bring a report whether we go to an alternative approval process or a voting process. And then council would decide on that. Staff would obviously make a recommendation, and then we would proceed with the whatever process is chosen at that point.
Okay, so at this point, we haven't decided AAP or referendum.
No.
Okay, and that will come back at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Councillor McLean actually sniped my question out from under me there because I heard the mayor mention AAP. So I just wanted to be clear that we hadn't chosen a path yet. In this particular case, I'm a fan of EAP. It's infrastructure we need. We're not looking at whether it's something we want to take on. This is something we need to do. And it's unfortunate that we're not able to move this further along at this time. So I will be supporting the recommendations today, and I'll be supportive of the AAP option when it comes back. So thank you.
could we at this point have this say that we would like to have staff pursue an alternative approval process? Or do we wait for the next report to come back to look at the two options? And that might be a Joanne Frank question.
Your Worship, thank you. Council could certainly direct staff one way or the other tonight. You know, you could direct that there be an alternative approval process held, or that there be a vote, what we use
Referendum.
referendum. You know, you could certainly, the only reason not to do that would be if you feel you don't have enough background information to make that decision. But basically, a referendum means a full vote, just like an election. And basic difference, besides the process differences, but the basic difference is cost. Obviously, there's a lot more cost to having to book 3 poll stations and hire staff. And, you know, you all know what an election looks like. It's basically the same versus an alternative approval process, which the budget is mostly newspaper advertising, because we are required statutorily to do newspaper advertising. And that's it. There might be a little bit of printing costs or something, but so that's the basic difference. And you can certainly direct staff on one or the other tonight if you felt ready to do so.
Thank you. Councillor McLean?
Yeah, I think there's a critical part of the AAP process, and referendum process, which we need to define the process. So for example, when is the deadline? How many elector responses are required? And that, I believe, needs to be set to council, which we don't have a report for at this point. So I think we need to wait regardless to get this thing started.
Joanne?
Thank you. Yes, that's what the next, as Director Douglas points out in his report, that will be part of the information we bring forward. You know, we could also, at that time, we need, if council wishes to wait until a report comes forward to decide whether to go by way of a referendum or an alternative approval process, then we will include that information in the next report. But regardless, if we knew that that we were going to proceed with an alternative approval process, for sure, we would need to bring forward in the next report the information Councillor McLean has pointed out, as well as other information. Council must determine what the deadline for elector responses are under an alternative approval process, and you must be the ones that make the fair determination on what the total voting number of electors are. So, and as well as the loan authorization bylaw and other information.
So inside of this process we're looking at here, does it shorten the process down at all if we determine tonight or indicate tonight which method we'd prefer to use or not? I mean, I'm looking at if we know right now, I mean, I don't know, haven't polled council, we don't do that ahead of time. But if we knew that we were doing or wanted to look at an alternative approval process rather than a referendum, your reporting back to us would not talk about a referendum. It would just do alternative approval process. This is the information you need to have. These are the decisions you need to make. So it would actually shorten what you would need to prepare for us.
That's exactly right. It would shorten the time to write the report in essence, because if you want that information to come forward next time, then we're going to have a few paragraphs on, the pros and cons of a referendum versus an AAP, which, as I just mentioned, really it's cost and time, of course, length of time. An AAP, is a 30-day appeal or petition process, and then a couple more weeks maybe to process that for the next council meeting, versus a referendum, you're looking at several months by the time you book facilities and hire staff. And so I forgot to mention that it's basically cost and timelines. So so in terms of saving time, it comes down to time to write a report, how much needs to be in the report.
Councillor Toth?
And a further clarification question. Regardless of whether we go AAP or referendum, either method would still need to be approved by the Inspector of Municipalities, correct?
No,
Okay.
no, neither processes require the Inspector of Municipalities approval.
Sorry, I'm getting SCRD process confused then clearly.
Yeah.
All right. How would you like to proceed? Councilor McLean?
I'm going to start off by moving recommendation 2, and then if somebody feels free, they can amend that one to be a little more specific. So I'll move recommendation 2, that staff be authorized to undertake an approval of the electors process as authorized under Section 84 of the Community Charter to facilitate borrowing of up to $3 million to be repaid over a period not to exceed 25 years in order to finance the cost of constructing the operations center.
Is there a seconder? Seconded. Any further comments or questions on the recommendation on the floor? All those in favor? Thank you. Would anybody else like to make another recommendation? Councilor Tots?
I'd like to move a recommendation that staff bring back a report outlining the costs, timeline, and associated approvals required for a alternative approval process only.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Item 10.6. This is a request for decision, Operations Center Offsite Services Tender Request. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of Council, the previous RFP that had gone out was really building specific. There are services that need to be taken up to the property where the building will sit. And this includes, some road work, some water, sewer, and probably drainage as well. And so that was not tendered, or that was not put out to RFP. And so we are recommending that we go forward with an RFP to put these out. We expect that the offsite services would come in somewhere around $680,000. And for that, we have the reserve, so we don't have to wait for borrowing to get going on this project. The remainder of the reserve, we're trying to hold for design of the building. So as we're doing the offsite services, the design can be going on, and the AAP would be going on all kind of at the same time. Once again, I've included that one spreadsheet into this report. It describes the top half there that you can see offsite costs were estimated at $680,000. Design 132, contingency of 30. So that would be the $843,000 that currently sits in a reserve. So we're looking for a motion to move forward with the RFP on this.
Thank you. Councilor McLean?
Yeah, just a question on order of work. Can the building be constructed before the offsite services, or which one needs to come first in terms of construction?
They can be done together or one before the other. In this case, we're bringing services up to the property. So then to tie in, you're going to put them in a site where you can tie in the future building too. So there's no one over the other first at this point.
All right, any other questions? And what would you like to do? Councilor Rowe?
I will move recommendation 2 that council direct staff to proceed with a tender to complete the operations center off-site construction for the road, sanitary, storm, water, streetlight, and landscaping to a maximum budget of $680,000 plus GST to be funded from the Public Works Yard Reserve account.
And is there a seconder? Seconded. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. It's nice to see this moving forward. This has been a long time coming. Thank you. Next item, statement of financial information, item 10.7. This is pages 80 through 126. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? All in favor? Thank you. I think altogether I had about 5. That's good. All right, Mr. Curry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Excellent. My report today presents the statement of financial information for the year ending on December 31st, 2019. Each year, the district is required to file financial information under the provision of the Financial Information Act within 6 months to the year end. Due to the local government finance order for COVID this year, the deadline has been moved to August 31st, 2020 for the year. The information in the report includes the financial statement information, which is completed through our annual audited financial statements presented by the auditors to council in later April or early May each year. The wages and expenses for elected officials are included. Wages and expenses for staff earning over $75,000 or more annually is included in the report. A reconciliation of the total wages to the audited financial statements is provided below the 75 or plus earnings, and the supplier payments exceeding 25,000 annually, which is every vendor that we pay to over the course of the year, which we pay to a total of over 25,000. The reconciliation of the total supplier payments to the annual financial statements as well, which ties into the total expenses on the statement of operations in the financial statements. And it also includes the grants paid exceeding $25,000 for the year. The process that we follow includes a review of expenses by staff and council. And since the review, we did make a few changes. So you may see a couple of, a few higher expense amounts because we have added the UBCM membership costs, which was not allocated originally. So we had taken that amount and then divided it between the members of council. And we've also added back a cost of a hotel, which was paid for as a reserve hotel, which is a days in for the UBCM conference, which had to be added to each of the members of council as well. Amy and both Carrie Ann worked to confirm each of the updated expenses for council and for the administration staff, which was just done actually all the way up until today. So I do recognize this has been a late agenda item and there's a lot of information to digest in a short amount of time. If council chooses to defer the recommendation today, an additional meeting would be required before the end of the month to receive the report before the August 31st deadline. Thank you. That concludes my summary of the report.
Council, any questions? Councilor Toth.
Thank you. Yeah, I did not vote in favor of receipt of this report because didn't have time to review it between our last meeting and this meeting. So I didn't know the content of the report and I won't be voting for recommendation 2 at this time, but don't let that, nobody else needs to follow my lead. Let's put it that way. That's just my own comfort level. That's an awfully late item. And if we don't pass it today, it does mean another meeting sometime this month. So thank you, staff, for putting this together. Hopefully I'll have some time to read it.
Okay, so I'm going to direct council to the report. I want to have you go to page numbers cut off on board, page 86. So this will be the signature page. All right, basically saying the information that we're sending in is accurate. Next page shows what we actually were paid last year, including a list of our expenses. The following page lists all staff who were paid over $75,000 for their salary for the year and their expenses. All right, so that's a list. The next page lists a severance, 2 severance agreements, and one severance and 1 retirement allowance. It indicates what those are. And then the next 2 pages lists all of the contracts or expenses that we paid that were over $25,000 and who they were paid to. They're in alphabetical order. You'll see Sunshine Coast Regional District in there. You can see the money that we paid to the Sunshine Coast Regional District out of the taxes. So this basically comes straight out of our accounting system. Next page lists the grants. You'll notice most of those are legacy fund grants that we paid out. In fact, I think they're all, well, there's a couple in there that were CIP as well. Councilor Rowe would recognize some of those. And the final piece on that page is taking this information that's in here and basically reconciling it to the financial statements that follow, which we already were presented with and approved in April. Was that when you said, Mr. Curry? In April.
Correct.
So that's what's in front of us tonight. Any questions about any of that information? No questions? Okay, there are 2 recommendations on page 80. Anyone like to make those recommendations? Councilor Rowe?
I'm happy to move recommendation 2 and 3.
Right, is there a seconder for that recommendation? I'll second it. Oh, this is a seconder. Okay, seconded. Any further comments or questions? Councilor McLean.
I'll also be voting against this. I haven't read it. I don't feel comfortable voting for something I haven't read, so I would prefer more time. So I'll be voting against it for now.
Okay, Councilor Toth.
Just a process question. What if recommendation 2 and 3 are defeated tonight?
Mr. Douglas, do you want to take that, or Mr. Curry?
Sorry. If it was defeated, we would have to make a recommendation through Andrew and Joanne that another meeting is held before the end of the month so that we can review this. Council can be provided the report in time, the same as the regular agenda process, and we would bring it back on as a regular item and with the same recommendations before the end of the month.
And your worship?
Yes.
If I may just add, that would entail council passing a resolution to hold a special council meeting, and we would have to confirm what that date would be on your schedule.
Okay, so before us right now is information that staff have taken out of our financial system and put in a report form. We've had our auditors come forward. I mean, I understand what Councilor McLean and Councilor Toth are saying, but I want to have you understand what you're actually voting against here. Staff have taken report from our financial system and put it in a report that the province wants to see. All of this information has been reviewed by our auditors and just put in another format, pulling out some of that information to provide to the province in the form they want to see it. So if we say, I mean, would we say, for example, well, I don't agree with paying, I don't know, Group of One Painting Inc., 32,000, whatever. It's not going to make any difference. It's paid. Right, so I guess I'm looking at what is behind. I understand you're saying you haven't had an opportunity to read this. Yes, Councillor Toth.
Happy to say, haven't had an opportunity to read this.
Okay,
This
would you like some time right now? Honestly, I'm willing to give you 5 minutes, 10 minutes, read it over right now, and let's vote on this rather than having staff go forward and calling another meeting. So would you like to take 5 minutes right now and read this? It's 8 pages. I'm willing to wait.
We've got a motion. We've got a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
It's a late agenda item.
Yes.
It came 4 hours before the meeting.
Yes.
I don't know what financial information was so last minute that it had to come 4 hours before the meeting.
Okay, that's a question.
And sure, that's a question. How come this couldn't have been provided on Friday with the rest of the agenda?
Through the mayor to Councillor Toth, to be perfectly honest, I had prepared this report ready for the July meeting, and we had done a review of the expenses and noticed some discrepancies with some expenses that were missing. And I went on summer holiday and requested that the expenses be reviewed, and then returned with this item going back on the agenda, and not all the expense items had been corrected. So we corrected the expense item so that it could make the agenda this week upon my return from summer holiday. So it was more just the only thing that had changed was a couple of items that hadn't been reconciled for personnel expenses that needed to be added to the report. So that's the complete honest reason why it became a late agenda item.
Okay. Councillor McLean.
So I'm reading it now. I disagree with the approach the mayor is trying to take. But
I understand.
I give it a quick read through. I've already noticed one thing that may be inaccurate.
Okay.
Bottom of page 90, the Nicholas Sontag Marine Education Center is listed as a contractor for goods and services for $35,000. I believe that was actually a grant through the Community Forest Legacy Fund and not a contract. So question to staff, do we know what that was for?
Through the mayor to Councillor McLean, I would have to review what the nature of the expense was. We did do a thorough review to pull every item that we recognized as a grant. This could be an item that could potentially be a reconciling item that has to move below to the grant expenses. The total together, they add up to the correct amount of expenses. So there's a possibility that this could have been a grant and we added it as a supplier expense.
Okay, Councillor McLean.
Okay, so that's one item. There's, I don't know, 30, 40 contractors here. I'd like time to properly review those and make sure they mesh with my general understanding of the work that we're doing and see if there's any questions that arise. So I would like to make a motion to defer, but we have a motion on the table.
We have a motion on the floor. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Scott?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, so the motion on the floor to as on page, on page 80, that they be approved for submission to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and that the mayor and director of finance be authorized to sign the statement of financial information approval form. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, 3 opposed. Would you like those recorded? No? Councillor McLean?
No.
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Kuster says no. Councillor McLean would like his opposition recorded. Thank you. Move on to the next item. Item number, sorry, next page. 10.8, Sunshine Coast Community Forest or Community Foundation COVID-19 Response Fund update. That's on page 127. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Your Worship. We prepared this report just to give council an update on the community contributions COVID-19 emergency relief. And these funds have been collected by the Sunshine Coast Community Foundation, and we had put out $50,000 of matching funds. And so this report was written late last week, just to make sure we had the most current information at that time. And so far they've received $34,193 from the community. And we have forwarded them $26,185, which was just a number that they pegged a couple months ago and asked for some matching funds. And so right now, if we were to pass them more funds, it would be about $8,000 to catch up to where they are in their donations. They have said donations have reduced. They're hoping that people seeing this on council will spur more people to donate and get the community to that $50,000, and of which then we would continue to match to that number. They aren't asking for more money yet, but I know that council was, trying to use this deadline of the end of July to help spur the community forward to, to donate to that point. So I've just provided this this report for information.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor McLean.
Well, more of a comment. I'm really proud of the work that we did with this. I look at the list of grant recipients and the number of organizations that the Community Foundation has been able to support over the past couple months has been outstanding. The number of donations that they have received has been outstanding. The community really came together and supported some of our organizations during this tough time. And I think we should all be proud of what we did.
Thank you. And I recognize that was, you put the motion forward for this. So acknowledge you for that as part of the task force and all of the stuff that we did around there. Any other comments or questions? All right, let's move on to item 10.9. Yep, Councilor McLean.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I think it's about time that we wind down this fund.
Okay.
We did some good. We served a purpose. And I think the impact of COVID was not quite what we expected. It was definitely there. But I think our not-for-profits on the Sunshine Coast have continued to thrive. So if I just flip screens here, I'm going to make a motion that matching donations to the COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund be ended effective August 5th, 2020. So that's today.
There's a seconder for that. And Mr. Douglas? So let's open my curtain.
Understanding what that means to you, what are we doing with the difference in from the 50,000 to what has been donated from the community so far?
Councilor McLean, how do you interpret that?
So I believe we're not at that 50,000 yet. So the difference is just essentially unspent budget funds at this time. So we could consider it coming in under budget.
So in other words, you're saying we would give them the additional $8,008.33 that they have collected to this point, and then say the rest of the 50,000 is being held back by us. We're not going to give them like the rest of it. We would give them basically 34,193.
Yes, up to any donations they've collected up to this moment. So there would need to be one more reporting period, essentially.
Okay, Mr. Douglas?
So in conversation with the association, they are actually anticipating getting the $50,000. They are, you know, they are, although the local contributions have slowed, they still feel that they are going to be able to reach that $50,000 number, and would, and in our conversation, they would really appreciate being able to get to the access to the $50,000.
Okay, Councilor McLean?
So I don't think our contribution to that will spur any further donations at this point. So of course it would be a doubling of their impact, but the intent of this was also to spur donations from the community. So I recognize it could be used, it would be well used. The Community Foundation's a trusted partner. But I think at some point we do have to wind this program down, and I think now is that time.
Okay, Councilor Rowe?
What was our original recommendation when we moved this? Did we say up to 50,000 as of a certain date?
I think it was $50,000, and staff was to report back to us at the beginning of August with the status at that time. Did we say up to 50,000? I think it was $50,000. Not up to 50, it was 50,000, I think.
The resolution from April 15th was that staff bring forward a report to council providing an updated status of matched and allocated Sunshine Coast Community Forest Legacy Reserve funds for the Sunshine Coast Community Foundation COVID-19 response funds at the August 5th, 2020 regular council meeting.
Right. Thank you.
Wouldn't we have had a motion to spend that money in the first place? Like that deals with sort of the status report, but I'm wondering how we phrased
the initial motion
the
for the
initial
50,000.
motion.
Maybe Jennifer can see if she can find that. Councilor Toth?
Yeah, it's on page 127 at the under context background. The full motion
okay.
is right there, and the top of 128.
Up to $50,000.
Sorry, I didn't scroll enough.
Yeah, I know. I did read it too. For thanks, Councilor Todd. All right, so we have a recommendation on the floor that Mr. Douglas, go ahead.
Just in light of the conversation that I have had with the association, maybe we could give them to the end of August and cut it off. It just cutting it off. That I phoned them for an update, and they're working away, still trying to collect money. They weren't given
a deadline.
A deadline in 3 months ago. But if we said, okay, now we've got a motion that says, okay, up to the end of August, and then we're going to cut it out, I think that would be reasonable for the society or the community group. But you know, it is up to council.
Councilor Toth.
I will make that amendment to change the date from August 5th to August 31st.
And that amendment is seconded. So what does our motion actually read now then?
That matching donations to the COVID fund, that better worded, of course, be ended effective August 31st, 2020.
All right, so that recommendation, the amendment to change the date to August 31st has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, so we have an amended motion that we end the donations or the matching funds at the end of August 31st. All those in favor of the amended motion? Thank you. All right, thank you, Councilor McLean, for that one. Number 10.9. This is Sunshine Coast Community Forest request. So this was information that we requested. So motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Your Worship. Once again, just a report for information. This report is really kind of honing in on what funds we hold from the community forest dividends. We hold them in two different reserves. I'm kind of skipping down the report a little bit, and my Excel table that I've included here. Currently, we have in one of the reserves $1.25 million. That is split up into two different what we call short-term, or the ones of the recommendation we take from the Community Forest Board or the subcommittee. That one had $102,000 in it. The second part of that is what we would call the long-term or the legacy funding, which holds $1.1 million, $1.14 million. And that has, as you can see, is sitting there, and it's just, nothing has been spent out of that. The $102,000, which is in the one that's recommended, we've had, there's $99,000 that we would say is earmarked, either earmarked through 2020 grants or holdbacks from previous years, and which remaining leaves $2,198, which is really interest that had been accrued over the year. Going further down my table, the second reserve that we have, when we received dividends in the past, we would take approximately $25,000 and we would put it into the second reserve until we, at some point in time, we stopped doing that, and we would just take the $25,000 into revenue for the year, because that was kind of its intent, was, you know, for that portion of the reserve just to flow through revenue for the current year as just a dividend to the shareholder. So for the number of years, there's 4 or 5 years, I think we put some monies aside, and at that point it equaled $96,000 at the end of last year. We made motion to use $50,000 as COVID relief. We also, through the budget, we put $25,000 into revenues for this year, leaving available $20,628. So, so the community dividend reserve wouldn't have the $50,000, nor would the amount that we hold for short-term granting. But as you can see, the longer-term legacy fund has $1.14 million in it at this point. So I know we've asked the hatchery to come forward with a report to council, or come to council and provide some information. And but this report is in advance of that, so you have information at hand when you get that report from the hatchery.
So at the end of August, if the full 50,000 has been matched in the community, the balance in the short-term reserve fund is $20,628.66.
Correct.
If there are funds that aren't matched, that would then go back in here and raise that balance, which could potentially be available then for the salmon and enhancement program, should we choose to award them some money for their well.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions by council? No questions. All right. Next item on our agenda, 10.10 UBCM Community Excellence Awards Program Application. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And who is speaking to this one?
I can try and speak to it briefly. Sorry, I didn't mean to flash off on there for you. The staff is seeking council permission to apply to the UBCM Community Awards. These awards that are put out annually by the UPCM to recognize outstanding service in local government service delivery. In this particular case, the pandemic started up a response with a community task force with a lot of community support and help, a ton of volunteers kicking in, but outstanding leadership by members of the District of Sechelt staff team. And so this is an opportunity to get some recognition for the community and the folks that took part in that task force that was incredibly successful. And as noted in Ms. Clark's report, is still active and ready to go should there be a surge in the fall as is being predicted.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Nope.
Okay, you're
Other
unmuted.
than well done, well done.
Yes. Yes. I have to say, word of what we did here on the Sunshine Coast and what our staff did and the community did, how we came together, actually was talked about in some of the meetings that we had with the ministers, with the health authorities. And I'm really proud of what staff and the community did. And all along, many people indicated that what was put together here was something, as Andrew's indicated, is something that can be mobilized quickly and would be there for other things that'll happen on the Sunshine Coast. One of the ones they kept talking about was forest fires. If a forest fire happens, this is something that can be mobilized for that. What I really liked about it was the redundancy that was built in. This came out of some conversations that a few of us had around the supports that some of the organizations in our community provide to the community. And their concern was what happens to the services we provide if something happens to us, right? So if something happens to some of the key people in community services, that they can no longer provide the services that they provide, right? They get sick and end up in the hospital. Who steps in? So the whole premise behind it was, how do we ensure that the services that we provide to the community continue on without us as the people actually running it? So it was the community's idea. Staff got behind it, and it was a phenomenal success. So I'm happy to support this application and have staff get the recognition for what they did. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, I'll move recommendation number 2. The council supports the application for UBCM Community Excellence Award for the Sunshine Coast Community Task Force Project. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. 10.11. Notice of motion. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And we'll send this over to Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. So I think most of the material is there, but I'll briefly summarize. There's essentially 2 parts of this motion. The first is to update our council correspondence policy. So that's an existing policy which is included below my report. So when somebody writes to council, they should be able to know what to expect, where their writing will go, or where their letter will go. I think our current process is inconsistent, and it doesn't match up with what we have published. And that discourages citizens, or could discourage citizens to write to us. Personally, I want to hear new ideas and perspectives from citizens. So I hope a new, clear policy will help with that. The second part of the motion recognizes that not-for-profit society should be approving their letters with us with some part of their membership, either board, executive, or full membership. This means that one letter from a not-for-profit society represents the views of many people. I would like to acknowledge this by placing some sort of higher priority on letters from society. One way to achieve this is to create two classes of correspondence, one from individuals and one from not-for-profit societies approved by their membership. The processes within each of these classes could be different, so it's more likely that a letter from a society will come up on our agenda, and that will be a good accountability tool to their members. And it won't just show up in our email inbox like emails that go to council@seashalt.ca. So with that, I think I'll open up. That's all I have.
Okay. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I just want to confirm in the motion that you've presented here, you want staff to update the policy to reflect what we're doing now. And then you want staff to go back and amend the policy with new practices. So looking to do it twice instead of just once.
Councillor McLean.
No, I think the intent is to do it once. So I'm hoping that we can have a little bit of a discussion here today to provide some general sense of direction with what we want to achieve. So it's kind of a double barrel change at the same time. And then it can come back to us at a future meeting, and then we can, of course, approve it or not.
Okay, so I have a question. I mean, and this is part of the process I think that we need to look at addressing. As you know, as mayor, I have letterhead, and then we have District of Seashalt letterhead. And there are times when I'm requested, a letter's been requested from me as the mayor, not representing council. It could be, things like a letter to somebody on their, the last one I think was a letter to somebody on their 100th birthday. Well, I'm not, and they need it tomorrow, right? So I forgot to ask, I need it tomorrow. So I'm not going to, wait to the council meeting and then get council approval to write a letter to somebody on their 100th birthday. That will go on mayor's letterhead, and it's me as the mayor and not as council who's writing the letter, right? And Joanne is very clear. If I have any questions about anything in that letter, Joanne is very clear about, yes, this is you. No, this is council. It needs to go to council. Like, we're very clear about what that line is. So inside of this, how would we recognize or request that the societies or the nonprofits actually indicate that, yes, this letter is coming to you on behalf of the nonprofit and not on behalf of an individual with the nonprofit? Right? Yeah, Councilor McLean.
So I welcome ideas on that, but I think part of our policy should be specifying which group approved this letter. But like I mentioned in my report, publishing these within an agenda is an accountability measure. If there is somebody claiming to represent a group who doesn't actually represent that group, this will now be in the public, so that group can refute that. Otherwise, somebody can claim to represent a group, it goes to our inboxes, and we believe that they are representing the group. So it's putting this stuff more in the public when it is from a recognized society.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, Councillor Rowe?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor McLean on that front, because there's no way we can absolutely guarantee that even if they say that they're representing a group, there's a certain amount of trust there. But having things available in more of a public way definitely would help the accountability factor. If I can go on and look and say, oh, wow, looks like somebody thinks that I consented to that and I don't even remember having a discussion about it, I'm going to be calling somebody up. So I agree on that front for sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So there are two recommendations. Councillor McLean.
My motion, so I guess I'll move them. The first one is, be it resolved that council directs staff to review and revise Council Policy 1.3.16, Council Correspondence to reflect current practice. And the second motion is be it further resolved that staff draft amendments to Council Policy 1.3.16, Council Correspondence, to lay out clear policy on when correspondence from recognized societies and individuals is added to the council agenda.
Okay. Could I suggest one word change? Instead of draft in the second one, incorporate. That would address Councillor Toth's question about two separate, right? We're drafting it to do that, and then staff incorporate amendments to council policy to have this other piece put in. So it does both.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. So motion moved, seconded by Councillor Toth. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Next up, we have our Chief Administrative Officer's report. First, a motion to receive the report. All in favor? Thank you. Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing really much to add. It's fairly self-explanatory, short report, mainly on our most recent COVID response activities. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I just want to say hi to everyone at the Seaside Centre, and thank you to Floria for coordinating that. And I'm hoping that we can adopt a similar process for public hearings where people can either attend in person and we'll help them get onto Zoom, or they can attend at home on Zoom. I think that will really make public hearings much more accessible. And hopefully this makes council meetings more accessible. You can attend in person at the Seaside Centre or do it online at home or YouTube, whatever works for you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. So let's move on to council reports. Okay, here's the order on my screen. Councillor Toth, Rowe, Scott, Lamb, McLean, Kuster. So Councillor Toth, you're up first.
All right, I'll make it simple. I've been doing lots of stuff, but nothing you guys are going to care to hear about.
All right, Councillor Rowe. Oh, and you're on mute.
My lips are moving and there's no noise. How unique. Not much to report really. Obviously it was nice being in the same room with you guys the last couple of days doing strategic planning. First time we've seen each other in person for a long time. That was good. And other than shaving my head for cash last Wednesday, there's nothing else much new.
All right. Councillor Scott.
Much the same as everybody else. Attended the public hearing for Trellis. Other than that, I've been busy with the other job and catching up on the reading. I did manage to get home today to read the amended agenda, so that worked out good. So yeah, just keep going on.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
I was helping Councillor Toth. I haven't been doing. You people don't want to know where I've been. Yeah, been busy. But,
Tom's been helping me with technology problems.
yeah.
Okay. That sounds like there's a story there. Yeah. Given. Yeah, we won't go into technology. Councillor McLean.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Kuster.
Well, I attended Trellis public hearing as well as Eric, and I'm sure some other council members. We did attempt to have a council conversation, but didn't have really too many people join us. So encourage people to take part in the council conversations in the future. That would be great. And last night I was just at APC, and other than that, just my other job and my looking forward to vacation. So that's it for me.
All right. My calendar actually was fairly light as well. We've had a number of SCRD meetings, and Councillor Toss going to report on those. So I mean, and I chaired the meetings in the last 2 weeks of the regional district, so a few days there. I did attend a meeting with the seniors planning table with Isabel McKenzie, the seniors advocate, and they were talking about isolation of seniors and care facilities. So it was a good conversation. I have my grandkids here for a week. My grandkids have never come to visit without their parents. So it was nice to have them here for the week. We got out on the boat for a bit. I taught them how to make bread. They picked out material for face masks and helped sew them. So and we played lots of games. So it was a good week. I did attend the chamber lunch with Mark Collins from BC Ferries. Councillor McLean attended that via Zoom. It was in person or via Zoom. It felt really strange going to a restaurant with strangers, like people that I don't associate with, and we all kept our distance. So it's just strange being out in that world, taking part in some of that. But it was, on the other side, it was good to actually see some people in person again. Charles public hearing. I have to say I really enjoyed the evening when Councillor Rowe and her compatriots, but there's 6 others, I think you said, 7 altogether, shaved their heads. It was done on Facebook Live. Initially, I was going to be one of the ones shaving your head. I didn't get to do that, but they had a lot of fun, you could tell. And I like the picture at the end with all of you together with your shaved heads. That's kind of cool. And congratulations on raising over $11,000 for youth mental health. Yeah. During this pandemic, my sister-in-law's dad passed away, and they finally ended up having a funeral last week, Friday. And it was obviously not here, it was another location. And so they've also started doing online funerals, so we could attend virtually. So it was nice to be able to be part of that and connect with the family, even though we didn't go there. We had our last elected officials meeting on Friday with our MP and MLA and the other local government leaders until September as well. So we're taking a break from that. So I'm looking forward to taking a little bit of time in the next few weeks. Hopefully we don't have any meetings and nothing blows up and we get to all have some downtime. It's been pretty stressful, I think, for all of us over the last, I want to say 5 months, right? 4 or 5 months. It's been a lot. And we're all still dealing with the repercussions of that, and the implications of that in our own businesses and our own lives as well. So look forward to seeing you all again in September. So over to Councillor Toth for his SCRD report.
Thank you. Not just me this time, but also Councillor McLean, who attended policing and public safety on my behalf, as well as the Transportation Advisory Committee. Worked out quite well. It would have been an extremely long day otherwise for me. So thank you, Councillor McLean, for making yourself available for that. My report did originally include a link to the water supply update for July, which the text is blue, but for some reason the link doesn't work, at least on my copy of the agenda. That update is available on the SCRD website, quite easy to find. Happy to take any questions. The only thing, I wrote it, I submitted it, and then I looked at it and went, this isn't quite clear enough. Mattresses are going to full cost recovery at the landfill. There is some efforts underway through advocacy efforts and through changes to provincial recycling regulations to have mattresses included in the EPR program like you do with motor oil and televisions and other electronic devices. So you would pay your recycling fee at the time of purchase. And so at the end of life, the items would be free to dispose of. thus cutting down on dumping in the woods. Other than that, happy to take any questions, or if Councillor McLean has anything he wants to add.
Councillor McLean?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. The big announcement during transportation was that they are going to be painting lines within the regional district and on the highway. And just today I saw the line painting truck. So expect some better lines around the coast very shortly.
Okay. Any questions for either of the councillors? Seeing no questions, let's move on to council correspondence.
I actually have one quick question.
Okay.
Councillor McLean mentioned the line painting. I noticed that some of our lines have also been repainted within the district of Sechelt. Is that done through, are we subcontracting through Modi or the same contractor that they're using, or is that just a coincidence that two line painting contractors are on the coast at the same time?
Mr. Yates, do we know?
I'm sorry, I don't know the specific details of who does our line painting. I know we use the same firm every year, typically, I think, one that comes over here. So whether they're doing stuff for Modi at the same time, I'm not sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Council correspondence, pages 149 to 171. First, a motion to receive. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. There are two items marked for information and one marked for action. So would anybody like to comment on either of these? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, item number 3, a letter from the Sunshine Coast Bear Alliance Society. So question to staff, I guess the request is for a separate wildlife attraction bylaw. How do we currently manage that? Do we currently manage that?
Again, sorry, I'm not familiar with anything that we may have done on the Bear Aware or Bear Alliance front over the past number of years. I don't know if Ms. Frank is aware of any existing bylaw to do specifically with wildlife or something that comes under our bylaw enforcement team.
Yep, Joanne.
Your worship, currently we do not have a regulatory bylaw that would enforce any regulations around how people store their waste, etc., which is what this type of bylaw would propose.
Okay. And I guess further to that then, given that we're looking at organics in the next while, etc., is this something that would be looked at inside of that around managing, you know, the food scraps, etc., so that we don't attract bears, etc., into, I mean, it's not just bears, we've got raccoons, we've got all kinds of different things, but bears can do a lot of damage. Is that something that will be addressed inside of moving that program forward? Yeah, Joanne?
Your worship, I can't speak to the details of our waste management of that program when it comes in to effect, but at this point, there wouldn't be a bylaw required to implement our bio waste. So, and at the end of the day, this is the proposal is a regulatory bylaw, just like our other regulatory bylaws. And then, you know, that would, whether we did that at the time that we bring in our new waste portion of our program or after or whatever, the two things really don't have anything to do with each other.
Okay, so what would council like to do with this? Councilor McLean?
Yeah, I'd like to see staff draft up a report regarding a wildlife attraction bylaw. So that's stopping short of drafting the bylaw at this stage. I'd like to just hear staff's thoughts for now.
Okay, and so we'll leave it to staff as to timing, given the programs and whatever that we've got coming forward.
Yep.
Okay, is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded. Any further comments and questions? Councillor Toth.
I'm opposed to it for now. I know that we're not asking staff to draft a bylaw at this time. Still, it's one more thing to add to staff's plate. And we don't hear a lot of complaints about wildlife attractants in Seashelt, and I don't know if that's just because people aren't reporting it or if people in Seashelt are actually fairly smart about it. But it's something that I would prefer us to look at and revisit after we begin our organics program.
Okay, and yeah, Councillor Payne.
I think beginning the organics program is the perfect time to start something like this. How people manage their organics will change with the start of that program. And it's an opportunity to set better habits. So I think that's the perfect time. We're going to be doing some communications work when that does roll out. So potentially blending these two together would be really ideal.
Okay, Mr. Douglas.
The district currently has a district of Seashell Solid Waste Control Collection and Disposal Bylaw number 548, 2016. It does have a section in it that deals with wildlife attractants. And there is pretty close to what they're asking for in their letter here, but there are a couple of differences. So when we come through with the new plan, we can add some wording into that bylaw, because they believe the bylaw will have to be amended anyway with regards to organics. So.
Okay, so what is the motion that's on the floor?
That staff draft a report regarding a wildlife attracting bylaw.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I'm going to be voting against this, just to let you know. At this point, I'm going to vote against this at this point. I'd like to see this be referred to staff for consideration when addressing or when rolling out the organics program. Rather than a report coming back, I'd like them to take this information, review that, and have it reflected in that. I don't care about a report. I think it'll come back inside of that, but I want it flagged that this is something they refer to. I don't necessarily want a separate report. Just me. Councillor Scott.
Question for Director Douglas in that bylaw. Is there any enforcement penalties attached to that bylaw?
Not that I can quickly view, no.
So it might be something in that referral that we consider in accordance with what the Bear Alliance is asking for is an enforcement penalty tied to it.
Okay. So there's a recommendation on the floor that we request staff draft a report based on this correspondence. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the recommendation on the floor? Okay. Are those opposed? Okay. I'll put forward a recommendation that we refer this correspondence to staff for consideration of incorporation into our existing bylaw or a new draft bylaw upon initiation of our organics program, including penalties. Is that what it is? Penalties? Is that the word? Seconded? Okay. So that's moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Toth.
I do still have concerns about enforceability of these things, but that's a problem for down the road sometime. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. I'd like to draw attention to correspondence item number 2 from Island Coastal Economic Trust. Seashell downtown improvements to spur economic vitality. So the Downtown Business Association applied to ICE-T, as abbreviated, for funds to assist with the Worth Avenue Improvement Project. So the District of Sechelt applied for funding for this project. Downtown Business Association applied for funding to ICE-T for this project. Both applications were successful. So this project, from what I understand, will be fully funded by grants received. Is that correct, Mr. Douglas?
I hadn't heard of the award for the Downtown Business Association or the value. So
Okay.
I can't confirm that at this
So
point.
they have 171,268 of the 685,075, and I think our other one was 400 and something, which I believe. I know when the application came to ICE-T, because I sit on the ICE-T board, the application came and indicated in the application that they were applying for these funds to go with the other funds from the grant that we were waiting to hear about. And it was, we heard about the other one and then we heard about this one. So 100% funding on this project.
Yes.
So I'd like to thank the Downtown Business Association and our staff who probably assisted them in putting the application together, and congratulate them for going forward with those funds. So, Mayor, Council, and staff emergency items. Anything to come forward? No? All right. Before we adjourn, I want to say I hope all of you have great time off in August. Look forward to what you get up to. Then you can report back in September, kind of like, you know, the summer holiday assignment you got when you were at school. It was like, come back and talk about your summer vacation. We'll see what you, and maybe by September we can actually look at doing some actual meetings, more meetings in person. That would be nice. Thanks to staff. Thanks for all you're doing. That's it. Motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you.